Look, I wanted to start by saying it's a really proud day for us in Pfizer in Australia. We're really delighted that we've been able to bring the first COVID vaccine to Australian patients, and we're certainly hopeful that it signifies the start of the road back to normality. The clinical trial, the pivotal clinical study upon which the approval for use in Australia was obtained, examined rates of symptomatic COVID-19 disease, and that showed a dramatic reduction with the vaccine. We're yet to see what the effect on transmission will be. If we look at previous vaccines that have been highly effective, such as, for example, the measles vaccine, when you do see that significant reduction in clinical disease, you do get a corresponding reduction in transmission as well. That is yet to be shown with the COVID-19 vaccines and with the Pfizer vaccine, but we're certainly studying that further. We'll also be examining what we call real-world data to see what the actual effect is in communities. And there's some early promising signs I'm sure your viewers have heard about as well in Israel that suggest that might be the case, but it's something that we still need to fully evaluate.
Yeah, we are all over the cases out of Israel and that early evidence. But let's go back to the beginning. We're getting the Pfizer vaccine and the AstraZeneca one. There will be others too. What is the main difference between the two vaccines?
So traditionally, vaccines have a weakened part of the actual virus or a part of the virus, and that's introduced into the body, and that triggers an immune response so that the body has defence in case they encounter the bug in future. The Pfizer vaccine uses a new technology called an mRNA platform, and so it doesn't actually have any part of the virus, of the coronavirus, in it. So it has the genetic sequence, or the blueprint, you could call it, for the spike protein. And so it's introduced through a vaccine. Some of the cells in your body then produce copies of that spike protein. That triggers an immune response so that in future, if you do encounter the actual SARS coronavirus, then your immune system is primed and ready to go, ready to attack, and so you won't get sick.
If you are vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine and you get COVID, what happens?
So no vaccine is 100% effective. So if you do get COVID, if you've been vaccinated, so generally speaking, those cases are mild. So you don't get those severe cases, those ones that require hospitalisation, or we've seen some deaths as well in Australia from COVID. So vaccinated people, even if they do get what's called a breakthrough infection, don't get as sick. So it may be just a mild, cold or a similar respiratory tract infection.
And doctor, what are the side effects?
So the side effects are actually not that different to what you'd expect from other vaccinations, other infant and adult vaccinations that I'm sure all of you viewers have had in the past. So the most common thing that people will experience is about a day after the vaccine, you might get a little bit of pain in your arm. And that's usually mild in severity. It settles within a day or two. Some people may get some tiredness, a bit of a headache. Less commonly, you can get some muscle aches and pains, and even less commonly, a bit of a fever. The important thing to note is that the reason people experience these effects is that their body is actually building up immunity. So it's eliciting the desired response against the vaccine so that if they do encounter the real infection in future, they will be protected.
Well, doctor, I don't wish to question your expertise at all, but we had Jane on the show a little earlier. She was the first Australian to get the vaccine, and she said she felt nothing. No side effects this morning, no sore arm, nothing like that. It's almost like she wanted to get it again. Will that be typical?
So, look, that's fantastic. I didn't see that, but that's great that Jane didn't have any effects. So she can get it again, but not for another 3 weeks. So the usual dosing schedule is a second dose after 21 days, and that provides the maximal protection. But I think what we've seen so far from the clinical study of 44,000 participants, and now to date we've actually distributed more than 80 million doses of the vaccine to all continents of the globe, is that what's been seen in the real world is actually very similar to what was seen in the clinical study, and that's certainly very, very reassuring.
Okay, just a few other things that we commonly get asked here at Sky News. Is this vaccine effective against all strains of the virus?
So this is, a really interesting question. It's certainly something that's exercising the minds of some of the best and brightest scientists around the world and at Pfizer. So what we do know with any virus, and maybe it's happened a little bit more quickly with COVID-19 than with other viruses, is that they mutate, and so they adapt to best survive in the environment. And so that's something that's entirely expected. So far, laboratory testing has shown that the Pfizer vaccine appears to maintain its effectiveness in a laboratory setting against some viruses that have mutations common to the UK virus, the South African virus, the Brazilian virus as well. Obviously, that's yet to be determined how that actually plays out in the real world, and it's possible there may be some reduced effectiveness against, for example, the South African virus. The fantastic thing about the mRNA platform that I referred to earlier was that if at some time in the future we find that there is a variant out there that escapes the clutches of the virus, we can very quickly tweak the vaccine in as quick as 100 days, obviously subject to regulatory approval, and then have a booster dose available. And that's much faster than previous vaccines. So, for example, the seasonal influenza vaccine can take up to 6 months to develop after the coming season strains are identified.
Okay, just finally before we let you go, the Pfizer vaccine, I think we only have on order about 20 million doses. We have more of the AstraZeneca. Is Pfizer in a position to provide us more if we need it?
So Pfizer recently completed an upgrading and an upscaling of its manufacturing capacity in Europe, and we retooled our factories to be able to address the dire need for vaccines across the globe, and we've announced that we can produce now up to 2 billion doses of the vaccine across the world. And we recently increased our agreement with the Australian government from previously 10 million doses to 20 million doses. We're continuing to have those discussions with more than 100 governments around the world, and obviously we're happy to talk to any government to find out what their needs are to vaccinate their populations and how we can best help them do that.